Okay, we will call the June 27th, 2024 meeting of Transportation and Circulation Committee to order. And we'll start with a roll call.
Committee Member Malavos.
Here.
Committee Member Rodriguez.
Here.
Committee Member Smith.
Here.
Vice Chair Seitslag.
Here.
Chair Blackerby.
Here.
Committee Members Bickford and Metzenberg are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And Ms. Grant, are there any changes to the agenda today?
No changes to the agenda.
Great. With that, we'll go to public comment on items not on today's agenda. I don't think we have any physical slips. Do we have any online?
We have no speakers in person or online.
Okay, great. And if you're here and wish to give public comment on the upcoming agenda items here, you can fill out a slip and turn them in or raise your hand on the Zoom meeting. Any announcements?
Yes, Chair Blackerby and good evening, commissioners, committee members. The two announcements. The first announcement was we submitted 2 grants for the Active Transportation Program Cycle 7 on June 17th. Everything's a blur. It was all hands on deck to get those applications submitted. So we submitted for 2 projects. It was the first one for the Castillo undercrossing for ped and bike improvements for that one. And then also for the Lower East Side plan implementation. So there was a couple components related to that for the overcrossing to connect the Lower East Side to the waterfront via Dwight Murphy Park. And then some improvements within the Lower East Side neighborhood for design for that. Again, it's going to be extremely competitive. There was lots of ramblings before we even submitted if this was going to be cut from the state budget. Right now, it's still hanging on as part of the state budget, but yeah, we'll still continue to provide updates. But we have to have near perfect scores probably to be in contention for funding. So I'll have an update probably, I think we know, towards the end of October, beginning of November, if we were successful or not. And then the second item was one, I did send in an email to staff. It was the meeting that happened yesterday. It was the State Street advisory committee meeting. I was out of town, but I was hoping Chair Blackerby could do maybe a 1 or 2 minute debrief on that meeting as it relates to the State Street master planning effort. And then please note after Chair Blackerby gives a brief update on that process that it will return at some point to the Transportation Circulation for review. And also the Downtown Parking Committee is also one of the reviewing committees as well. So with that, let us know what
happened.
Yes.
Yes, so we had a meeting yesterday, which was very well attended, and there's been great public engagement, lots of public comment in advance and at the meeting, which we love to see. Yesterday, there was, it's been a long process. There's been a lot of iterations. Yesterday, we went over sort of closer to real design concepts than we've ever been, I would say, about sort of block by block what some proposed, like sort of this or that characteristics could be with regards to, frankly, like circulation, mobility, how things are laid out in the blocks, basically from 400 to 1300 block on State Street. And again, this isn't a master plan thing. This isn't like an interim situation or whatever, even though that's, of course, what people want to talk about because they talk about what's going on right now. And so there was a presentation given of sort of the overarching draft concept design. And then we broke into small groups, basically 3 groups of the State Street Advisory Committee members to sort of give specific feedback on what we had seen, and then came back into the group, reported out, got a bunch more public comment, and these meetings are never long enough. And so we were supposed to take kind of straw polls on what we think sort of each block should be, what our take is on it. But we did not get to that part because the meeting was already, I don't know, well over. And so it's my understanding a sort of continuation of that piece of the meeting is being scheduled in the month of July. Just got a doodle poll before I came here, and I think it'll likely be the beginning of the week of the 15th of July. And so don't know a time or which date, but that's the update. Now, the plan in general is to, once that's done, do a little more tweaking into a draft plan and then distribute out to the public and have some public engagement basically over the rest of the summer. And then digest that and come up with a sort of final draft plan for later in the fall, winter for, approval and all that stuff. But as that public circulation happens, coming back to the different advisory committees, including ours.
Okay. Great, thank you for providing that update. And then, of course, yes, once there's a date set that we know, then I'll send out a reminder in case any of you would like to participate.
Yes. And thank you for coming. Kathleen came, and we appreciate that. And it's always interesting. Okay, that's all the announcements.
Yes, that
Okay,
is it.
so we have one item on the consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes from the April 25th meeting. Entertain a motion to adopt those minutes.
I'll motion to approve the minutes of April 25th, 2024.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
There's a second. All right. Can we do a voice vote, I assume? Yeah, okay, great. I never know what world we're in anymore with regards to virtual meetings. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and now to our first presentation agenda item, understanding regional travel patterns.
Yes, so I'm going to bring up Mike Becker, and he's the Director of Planning with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. And this is just an overview of understanding our regional travel patterns. He's going to start just in general of what the travel patterns are in Santa Barbara County. And then after he finishes the overview and how the data was obtained to do such analysis, then I'll dive a little bit more into the city of Santa Barbara as far as commute statistics. And I think with that, we'll leave it to Mr. Becker. And also just one more thing. For tonight, I think it's a really good synergy because the item following is going to be about the climate action plan and transportation measures. And so this is really, again, for the travel patterns, it's a snapshot in time of what the commute patterns look like now from a transportation perspective and how we would use such data for just kind of your day-to-day planning to, longer range planning. So with that, go ahead and Mike, and we'll kick it off. Yeah, and I'll give you both. Okay.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Blackerby and committee members. Every time I prepare to give a presentation, I think of what I'm going to say, and then somebody like Jessica just says everything that I was going to say at the beginning. So, but I do appreciate you putting me first on the agenda. I'll be on the 5:10 a.m. flight tomorrow and still need to pack. So, thank you for that. But I'm here to talk about a project that SBCAG undertook primarily in fiscal year 23-24. And we wrapped it up earlier this year. And as Jessica mentioned, I'm going to kind of give the broad overview and touch on a couple data points that came out of it, they're more regional in nature, and then Jessica will continue with more Santa Barbara specific indicators. And so at first I'm going to talk about why we did it, then I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the platform is that we used, and then, as I mentioned, walk you through a series of indicators that are more regional in nature. So why did we do it? It's a good question. I think over recent years, these big data platforms have become available in the transportation planning world. Probably the most popular one is a company called Streetlight. And what we did is we went out to bid. We kind of said, we're looking for a big data platform. And the one thing that we were looking for was to make them compete against each other. Said, here's what we have in terms of a budget, but give some consideration to the county government and the 8 cities in the region and let them have access as well. And so Replica came back and said, we'll give SBCAG full access plus everybody else full access for a year. And good news, on June 20th at the SBCAG board meeting, they approved an agreement with Replica that goes through 2039. So we have this big data tool for a very long time. So maybe I'll come back in a couple of years and give you the Understanding Regional Travel Patterns 2.0. But we did it, we weren't trying to answer any questions or it was kind of to create a benchmark of this is how people move within the region, where people come from to work in different places and where people go for work and so forth. And you'll see that as I get into some of the data points. But again, there was no editorializing in it. It's just, here's the numbers, here's what we found out of this. So that's why we did it, to inform future planning work and the work of SBCAG and the member agencies. So then on to Replica. So Replica is a company that runs this model and they sell access to it. And it's a little goofy. It's an activity-based travel demand model. In the transportation world, many agencies use travel demand models, which are, it's the crystal ball of planning of trying to figure out what, how vehicles are going to be moved or what's the travel demand at some point in the future. Replica doesn't care about the future. They're only trying to calibrate a model to the existing conditions to the best that they possibly can. And the way that they do that is they create the built environment, so they know where every road is, every bike path is, sidewalks. They know where buildings are, residential units, employers, and so forth. Put on top of that all the census data that's available, and start running the model and calibrating it. And the way you typically calibrate the model is you compare it against traffic counts. So that's how SBCAG would calibrate its model, is we have a series of traffic counts and we try and hit those numbers to get close to those numbers. So they do that, but they do a little bit more, which is what actually makes them a lot better than what SBCAG can do itself, is they purchase anonymized cell phone data. So the phone that you carry in your pocket or in your purse, it's tracking you. And so Replica buys that data. It's anonymized. We can't tell where you started your trip and where you ended it, but it's anonymous and aggregated. And it's aggregated to census geographies that are bigger than a block. So we couldn't tell where any individual is going, but kind of if you look at a bigger picture of how many people from this census tract are going to this census tract, we can see that. And with using the cell phone data, they can get a pretty darn accurate model. And I won't say it's 100% perfect, but it's kind of better than anything that this region has seen for this topic to this date. And I mentioned SBCAG would use traffic counts. They also use traffic counts too. So they're calibrating it to make it as good as possible. They don't look at every day. So they have 2 releases a year. They release a spring and a fall of every year. And I think my very last slide, I'll get into that more, but it makes it difficult to kind of like, what's the impact of this event or what's the impact of tourism? It's kind of more broad. but that's replica. So I have a series of, yes.
Can you turn on your mic?
I'm sorry, I wouldn't interrupt, but I want to understand this. You said they used traffic counts as well?
Yes.
Was one of those bullet points does one of those bullet points include traffic counts? Or is that
The
something
very
different?
last one that said ground truth data.
That's traffic
That's-
counts.
Or, so it could be, yes, they use traffic counts for sure, but ground truth could be, I don't know, the number of people who go through a toll booth each day. Some known fact on the ground that they can compare the model against.
Including
traffic counts.
Thank you, I
Yes.
appreciate that.
So these, each of these is a slide that I'm going to walk you through. And you can see from the first one here, age cohorts, it wasn't 100% of everything we did with this came from replica. We did a variety of kind of census-based indicators that were kind of importance, useful for understanding things in context. And I cut some slides out of the presentation today, but otherwise it would have been, the first 3 slides are the ingredients of assessing the jobs housing imbalance. But I cut some slides out. So here we have, this one I found fascinating, and this is looking at the population, this is Santa Barbara County entirety, in 1980, 2000, 2020, by age. And so if you look at the bar graph on the right, you could see, what do you see that blue line doing towards, in the higher age groups? It's increasing. And so that's our older population is growing. And what's a little more concerning is you see from the 30-39, the 40-49, that blue line's decreasing. So we're losing population of that kind of the parent age when you still have kids in the house, but we're gaining the empty nester population. And then you can also see the big rise in the 2029. I would be willing to bet that that is related to the expansion of UCSB. Yeah.
I'm just curious how you resolve the increase in child population with the decrease in the parent population. When there's also a decrease in family size.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'd have to look deeper. That 10 to 19 going up, yet 30 to 39, 40 to 49 dropping. Unless that's partially related to that 2029, but yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. That's what I said. So this is household income for all of Santa Barbara County and then the 2 subregions, north and south, and then each of the jurisdictions. If each of those bars has a red tack mark in it, and so that's the average, the middle. So you can see for the county, it's right on the 50% line. And then if you go down, the further to the left that tick mark is, kind of the wealthier the city is, the further to the right, the less wealth in the city. So you'd see, like, I think Solvang is the one where they have about 65% of their population is above average for household income. And then on the other end of the spectrum is Lompoc, where about 23% of their population is above average income compared to the region as a whole.
Mike, could you just describe when you're showing these different locations how unincorporated county area is captured?
Yes. It's always tricky. So here for South County and North County, when it says that, that encompasses incorporated and unincorporated. Some things it's by assembling census tracts. I think we also, with Replica, we are able to create our own geographies that were North County and South County, and then you could subtract out the cities. But that's certainly a challenge, and it goes beyond just this project of, especially because the unincorporated county, even if you can find something, that's still not separating north and south. So it's
Totally, yeah. Thank you.
yeah. Work from home, this one was of special interest to us. SB CAG is required through Senate Bill 375 to demonstrate to the state how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles, which are the cars and trucks that you or I would drive. And one of the ways to do that is to increase work from home. And so what we found, we wanted to look pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Post-pandemic on here being 2022, which some could argue is the tail end of the pandemic. So pre-pandemic, that 2019, that's equivalent to about 6% of the workforce. So on any given day, about 6% of people were working from home. And then during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, that figure shot up to about 15%. And it's still, to this date, still holding about that, which is good news for us, and actually probably for Jefferson's presentation too, that people, the work from home has stuck. And hopefully over time, we'll see that. And then on the right, that's interesting too. So this is the people who work from home by income group. And it's crystal clear, the more money you make, more likely you are to work from home. Yeah. So this is imported, local labor versus import labor. And it just shows the workforce for each jurisdiction in Santa Barbara County that originates in that same jurisdiction. So if you look at the city of Santa Barbara's line, so that 66%, that's of the work trips that end in the city of Santa Barbara. So somebody's going to work, driving or traveling to work, starting and ending in the city of Santa Barbara would be about 66% of the total. And then on the flip side, the city's importing almost 25,000 work trips a day. And you know, I think on the south and southern Santa Barbara County, it's kind of one cohesive urban area. So a lot of those, and I think you'll see on the next slide, are just coming from Goleta or Goleta Valley or Carpinteria. Yeah, but then you can see some extremes, like the city of Buellton. Most of their workforce, only 20% of the people who start their journey to work end their journey to work in that city. So 80% are going somewhere else. But what's equally as interesting is they're importing all their labor too. Yeah. It's a mismatch. Long distance commuting. So this, we wanted to look at, so this is also journey to work. And looking at trips that are longer than 16 miles or longer than 32 miles. Production is the people who start their journey to work in that jurisdiction that's listed. Attraction is people who end their journey to work in that jurisdiction. So if we look at, for production, Santa Barbara, not a whole lot of long trips, which means that most of Santa Barbara's workforce is either working in the city or somewhere on the south coast. There's a small segment that's going somewhere else, but yeah, most of it's staying local. And then you could see on the flip side, the attraction. So the city's producing, has about 48,300 work trips that start there and about 56,000 that end there, which it's not going to match. It's a mismatch between the workforce and the number of jobs. But a much higher percent of, about 17% of the trips that end in the city for coming to work are longer than 16 miles and about 15% are longer than 32 miles. This was, like, when we got into this project, this is the one question I wanted to answer. And it's not relevant today because the highway's closed. But, you know, especially, I work for a regional planning agency, so I hear a lot from the San Ynez Valley community about getting cars off of the 154, the through trips. Why does everybody take that as a shortcut? I know personally when I'm coming south, if I have the maps on, as soon as I pass that 154 intersection, it adds 2 minutes to my trip and adds 6 miles. So they're saving 2 minutes by going that way. But so we were able, with this tool, you can isolate the trips that start or that are on the 101 where the A is and are on the 101 where the B is. And you can see that from coming south, it's 60% or 62% will pick the 154. And then going north, it's less. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they missed the off-ramp there at Hope State. But it's still high. It's still high, no matter what. But it was just an interesting question that I wanted to answer, and today I get to share it with you. Okay, and then we did vehicle miles traveled per capita. So this is the sum total of all the miles driven in a jurisdiction divided by the population in that jurisdiction. And here we did pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. And pretty much across the board, we have seen a decrease in the vehicle miles traveled coming out of the pandemic, about 9% countywide. And then the city of Santa Barbara is about a 5% reduction coming out of the pandemic. So this is another question that always comes to SBCAG. I think the most popular question ever asked of SBCAG is how many people are crossing the county line coming up from Ventura. So this tool, again, it gives us the way to kind of dig into this a little bit deeper and see how many people are coming, why they're coming. And you could see why are people coming on the weekday. Only about 30% are coming for work. There's a lot of other reasons why Ventura County residents are coming into Santa Barbara County. That is the biggest category, but it's not a majority by itself. Where are they going to? You could see if they're coming to work, Santa Barbara is the most popular place to go. About 40% of them that are coming to work are going to the city of Santa Barbara, and about 37% for any purpose. The household income one, it's you have to probably squint your eyes to see it, but I think it's with the 75 to 150 income categories are higher. So these are people who live in Ventura County coming to Santa Barbara County for work. And those two categories, from $75,000 to $150,000 for household income, a higher percentage of them are coming to Santa Barbara County than are staying in Ventura County. So it just highlights that it is the middle income workforce that is making that. And then the last table there, you can see where they're coming from. City of Ventura and City of Oxnard are the highest. And this is my last slide. So when we were doing this project, Jessica asked me, she said, can you look into the impact of tourism? And I'm like, how can you do it? With the 2 data releases a year, it really doesn't lend itself too good to that. But the one thing we could do is, this is part of the product, is they have credit card activity. It's only county-wide, though, so we can't go to a smaller geography and see credit card activity. So if you look at, I think the weekly 2022 and the resident, non-resident is basically the same data. But it's, you can see credit card activity ramps up throughout the year, peaks right before Christmas, and then falls off and starts all over again. But at that lower right graph, I think this is where you could potentially see the impact of tourism. Through the summer months, the resident spending goes down, so we're going on vacation. And then at the same time, the non-resident spending goes up, so they're going on vacation also, but they're coming here. Yeah. And that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll stick around to answer questions too while Jessica does her presentation.
Great, all right. We'll do you want to go ahead and do your part, Jessica, or do you want to, okay.
Go ahead and, because yes, it's sort of just a little bit deeper dive, and as Mr. Becker said, that, this, the travel trends doesn't editorialize what's happening, but I will attempt to editorialize.
You can, yeah.
what I think, and again, yeah, it's just we're really happy to be able to have this big data source, and it's great to hear that, yeah, we have it now through 2039, just to be able to, yeah, understand. Yeah, if we're on trend, or do trends continue, or where are we fluctuating, especially from the work from home, that will be a really important metric to follow. But yeah, Mike did cover some of this again for part of his presentation, but I found it interesting again that from work trips originating within the city of Santa Barbara, that 66% stay within the city of Santa Barbara, and then and if you follow that on the lower, or on the left hand side, so 66%, and then South County, so that's like a mix of again, like City of Goleta, City of Carp, Montecito, Summerlin. So it's a mix of unincorporated, corporated areas, but really, yeah, 92.7%. So as far as like our journey to work, it's pretty much right in our South Coast area, which I found fascinating. And then the other one that again, to editorialize is, if you look at the lower, right, well, actually, let me start at the top right corner first. Again, this is, again, a snapshot in time for what the breakdown is for usage. So 60% are in, private autos, and the auto passengers, so that would be the carpooling, and walking's, about 9%, and biking's about 2.6%. And then transit 1.2. But if you look at the lower right, of how close people are getting from home to work, and that just kind of reiterates really the importance of having a safe and active transportation network. So again, from a transportation planning perspective, through that we see, like for somebody traveling of a choice, like a mode choice before they switch to a different mode choice, is typically up from about half a mile to a mile is where people are willing to walk. And then roughly above that, it's about 1 to 4 miles that people are willing to bike before then they choose a different mode. But again, that's a pretty big portion of already Santa Barbara residents. So again, trying to understand that and how we can strengthen the active transportation network, and also for transit as well.
I have a question real quick, just
Yeah.
with that. I mean, these aren't like people who necessarily drove, right? So they just, or is
Right, it's just, it's showing, it's not a
who went from
breakdown
point
of
to-
that,
right.
so.
So the assumption is some percentage of those people, probably walked and biked and took the bus, right?
Right, and I think that's will play into Jefferson Litton's,
exactly.
the climate action plan of kind of the work from a climate change perspective of, how do we get people to, choose more active transportation and transit. And again, there's 1,000,001 reasons, or, age, ability, season, weather, and all of that of what people choose. But certainly the data is there for opportunities. So just wanted to point that out. And then the other, on the flip side, so this was part of your attachment to work trips destined for the city of Santa Barbara. And again, it's a little bit, as Mr. Becker said, slightly off on some of the statistics from, attractions and productions on that. Yes, so workforce and jobs don't, so it's not a like for like on that. But again, work trips ending in city of Santa Barbara, 43% began outside the city. But most of them, again, 83.4% are from the South County. So it was actually a big surprise to me that, Ventura County, it was only 6.6%. But that, of course, makes up the bulk of the vehicle miles traveled. So, how do we then, from a planning perspective, how do we reconcile that? So again, I have highlighted how close people are from their work to job. So I think that's something that was really the goal of the general plan, was bringing people closer to, from residents to their jobs. And of course, we are not there 100%, but it's close, it's closer in what we're seeing in the higher density or areas are part of our, our grid system, for, again, lending itself for walking and biking and transit. So, and then this was just a bar graph, Mr. Becker gave me. And again, it's just another way to look at this data from a bar chart perspective. But again, the share of the VMT it's a small percentage, but a big issue with the vehicle miles traveled. And then from a climate aspect, pollution and all of that's something that as we go on to plan, that you try to minimize. I thought this was also an interesting, I believe this was attachment 3, of zero-car households, because that's often in a lot of our hearings that, everybody has a car, but that's not necessarily true. It's a small percentage, but it's still like 5%. That's still a lot. Then if they don't have a car, then how are they commuting? And so that's in the income. Oh, I think it's on a different slide. I'll get back to that one. But I also find that fascinating. And then also that of how many households, there's 28.7% are one vehicle households. And so again, being able to have alternatives, because that's the point of their general plan circulation element, is really to create a transportation system of choices. So I think this is just really clear data of why we need to be a city that continues to provide those choices, because not everybody is a 2-car or 3 or more car family. The data says otherwise. And then also there was a graph that we included too, was the equity indicators. And I thought this one was also interesting for the average work or school commute attributes. And so the average walking distance was 0.9 miles. So that's right around, again, the mile mark before a work commuter or somebody going to school will then change to a different mode. Biking distance was interesting. It was on average, it was 2.3 miles. And then average for transit was 5 miles. And I think that's also very interesting, and with what Ms. Blackerby does in her role as MTD for analysis for that of trying to, again, plan transit networks and trying to minimize time so it becomes a more attractive mode choice as well. And those were all of the slides. That concludes our presentation. But again, really happy to have this data, and it's fun to be able to have access to Replica. I still feel like we're all a little bit of dumb users, trying to really make the platform work for us. But Replica has been really good about taking phone calls and knowing how to pull the data as well. And so I think we'll get regionally better at working with the data and knowing how to ask the right questions as well. So with that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Take any questions. And Mr. Becker, if you want to come back up to
Yeah.
the mic so we can hear you, assuming people have questions for you. And then, we'll take questions. We'll ask for public comment and then comments. So, you had one? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not a big one, but a lot of people in town have motor scooters. You just see a lot of them buzzing around. Is that separated out in any way? Is there any way to?
That's a good question. I'd have to follow up with them. I would guess that if it's like a moped type thing, it would fall into car or vehicle. We got a lot of questions throughout this about e-bike versus pedal bike, and there's no way.
And the electric scooters and.
No, I
yeah, all that
would
stuff.
tell people to go to a bike shop and ask them what the percentage of.
Yeah.
And that's what we found out as far as because when we're trying to dive in, even within a jurisdiction and looking at certain neighborhoods or to try to pull some data. And generally speaking, I think it's replica data is pretty good at telling, again, overall stories and with vehicle ridership and pedestrians, it's a little bit harder on the bike mode because of some of the differences in speeds. And so we found, we're also working with Trislan Nelson that out of UCSB, she's the head of the geography department and a big GIS wonk, and she's been working on the bikemaps.org and some safety analysis. And so we're seeing some overcounting of cyclists maybe at some intersections, but undercounting in others. And again, if you were to look at the 30,000 foot level, I think it tells, again, a good story. And we're just trying to understand as we now get to be able to track through the years, how can we refine that?
Other questions? Yeah, Andrew?
I got one question just out of curiosity about airport traffic or just volumes. Is that data you have access to, or I imagine that's, what's that?
Cars or
Airplanes.
No, Replica doesn't concern itself with aircraft.
You have to turn off your phone. Your location services don't work when you're
I'm sure there's some
in
people who
airplane
live in
mode?
the Elwood neighborhood that can
And
tell you.
then, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but through the airport master planning efforts, we do track
Yeah,
airplane data.
and I'm
It's
sure the
just
city has the data.
Well, that definitely
somewhere.
exists,
yeah.
yeah.
it's-
Yeah, Ms. Chuan?
This is a little bit of you pointed it out as something you were wondering, and I've always wondered it too, similarly, but has anyone tried to get Google Maps to stop recommending the 154 as the best route?
I believe they have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's what I said, a series of roundabouts along the 154 will probably solve the problem.
All right.
They have tried, yes.
Oh, you could, public comment.
Yeah, public comment slip,
Yes.
and
Yes,
yeah.
we could hit, yes.
that's how we can hear you if you
Right.
do public comment and then fill it out. Yeah. Good question. Other questions? Yes.
I think, and you sort of mentioned some of the things that, about, you're happy to see that a lot of these trips are emerging or starting locally. What do you think from this data? I mean, this was fascinating and I think really surprising for me. Kind of initially, what stands out to you as something that really surprised you, and how do you think, if there's one or two things that you would maybe change in how the city does transportation from this?
I'm not
Obviously,
gonna
that's
tell
a
Jessica to
huge,
change.
yeah.
We know
She
you have
doesn't want-
opinions. Come on.
I think for two things that stood out to me, so number one was the age. I think that's going to create some serious problems in the future. Because more and more of our workforce isn't going to be able to get housing because it's going to be occupied by people of retirement age. Which then goes into number two is the graph that Jessica said that I shared with her of showing that just a small part of the commuting population is responsible. I think it was 14% of the people that commute to the city of Santa Barbara are responsible for 68% of the VMT, which is directly correlated to GHGs. So that just highlights the need to address the jobs housing imbalance.
Good point. Other questions? So I have one, which is there's long been an obsession with commute trips, with journeys to work, right? But it's also been known in planning circles for a long time that it's nowhere near even a majority of trips that are taken. in life, right? And also sort of, we see, you know, VMT is one thing, which is kind of not the thing that was always tracked, right? More of like, how many cars are here right now in this space, and traffic counts and things like that. And I think the perception, right, is like, there are hordes coming across the border of Ventura County into this, and then we see, like, for the city of Santa Barbara, it's like 6.6%, right? Like, but, you know, of course, as a community, we've committed to putting lots of billions of dollars into making their lives easier to get up here, right? So my question is, since most trips aren't work trips, and I know a lot of this focus on that because that's what people think is, you know, most important, sort of the decision makers, that's what they think of, like, that's the thing that people do in their cars, is go to work and come home. I'm super curious to kind of find out more, you know, as this data continues to be available, like, how can we sort of move the levers on all those other trips, right? Which to me seems easier, right? Social things, eating, recreation, or whatever, that's like much lower hanging fruit to get somebody to pick a different mode, even like once a week or something like that. So I'm just curious if there's anything kind of on the SPCAG front or that to look at, you know, how can those levers that aren't work trips be addressed, you know, for mode shift? Because to me, it's just as good if somebody, you know, if they remove one trip of driving the car alone a week, I don't really care if it's to work or, you know, to see a friend, if those are roughly the same distance, kind of who cares to me. I mean, we want all of them to be some alternative mode ultimately, right? But I'm just curious what you think.
Very good question. So we did, I think, as you flip through, if you go to our website, you can find the whole document. There is a variety of things that look at beyond journey to work. We did, half of it is journey to work.
Yeah.
We spent quite a bit of time doing that, and I think that's, we've done that because it's related to our other work through like RENA and addressing greenhouse gas emissions.
Sure.
But I think that's a good idea for when we revisit this. I think our plan was to, SBCAG updates a regional transportation plan every 4 years, so we were going to do probably off years, so every 4 years, but 2 years after a regional transportation plan, kind of update this report. And totally open to ideas of what we look at, and if we want to get away from solely looking at journey to work, we could look at just trips in general. And like what's on the screen for Ventura County residents coming. So we look at journey to work as well as journey for any other purpose.
Right. Obviously, we have a lot of journey to school in our
Yes.
region, right? That is particularly, you know, that's of interest. And I know a lot of it's about peak hour stuff of like, this is why it's important and why commute is important because a lot of people are going at the same time. Other questions? Anything else? Yeah.
Well, I just, to your point, Chair Blackerby, I think we'll have to think about that some more because it's, I think as far as the work lever, that's probably the easiest one to not manipulate, but as far as to offer other alternatives, like with like the Coastal Express for the Ventura workforce coming into the Santa Barbara County region. But yeah, harder because that becomes, I think, a issue of politics and economics, and because then that's helping feed the economy as well, having Ventura County residents also come to shop and do other things, but at the same time,
Yeah, I guess-
struggle with the vehicle miles.
I'm just not
traveled.
that worried about Ventura County residents. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I want them to stay home and go to work near where they live. And I want people to live here and go to work, go to work near where they live. Or like do whatever near where they live, I guess is my point. So it's like, I know a lot of really smart people are working on what
Yes.
Ventura County residents do, right? Your
Right.
job, our jobs is to
Right.
try to get our residents to, you know, pick different modes. And as we can see, there is seemingly a lot of low-hanging fruit.
Right, right, exactly.
Want to make 101 2 lanes again?
Yeah, well, as long as one's a bus lane, yeah.
I
Okay.
got a question. You mentioned like the segmenting the travel or the trips or the data that you're seeing into classified as work, classified as travel for school, is that done within Replica, or is that?
It's Replica, yes.
Okay.
So that's building on, number one, like their first layer that they're going to put in there is all census data, which provides some background. And then they can use the cell phone data to calibrate that better. So again, it's not 100% perfect, but it's good. So, and if you go through the report, there is a lot more of travel for different purposes, so you can see that. I think the one thing that would stand out, if there was something wrong with the data, and this happened when I was trying to look at commercial vehicles, is if you look at different data releases in terms of like say, spring 22 and spring 23, and if there's a big discrepancy, then you know there's something wrong with the data. And I did not see that with looking at the trip purposes.
Thanks.
But I also, just to add to that, Replica for, as far as for biking, it's tracking the work commute, but not the recreational side. So that's also something on our network, or when we track, because we've originally just depended upon census data, which again is 16 years and up, and if they're part of the workforce, then we have data tracking. But there's a lot more cyclists on the network than just that too. So that's something that we continue to grapple with, and that's kind of will be a part two, I think, with the climate action plan and how we realistically track all mode users as well. And we've been working with other jurisdictions like City of San Luis Obispo in Ventura County. They have a different tracking system, so we're trying to understand that to see if we could implement that to get better data.
Can I ask you a question about? I have a question about what you just said. So our biking rates are quite low. Is that partly because are you just counting work trips?
It's just counting work trips.
It
That's
could be
American Community Survey
anything
data,
other
right?
than recreation. So it could be if you're
Right.
going to school also or something, but
Right.
yeah, no recreation. However, I would qualify, I did see some bicycles on top of the ridge in Replica.
Oh, yeah.
So either
So
they're,
they'll-
maybe
So
they
when the
still.
154 is closed, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah, so like doing errands, if you ride your bike and then use your credit card?
Then you're counted as your journey, you're going to shop or whatever.
Journey to shop.
Yeah,
Okay, so that would land.
yeah.
Right.
But that would land in replica data, but maybe not in the data you've been using.
Right.
Is that?
So that was one of the questions, I think, so now that we've kind of had the 30,000-foot view of, how can we maybe use this data for specialized efforts, like for State Street? Because that was one of the comments, that anybody that bikes, just bikes through State Street. They don't ever stop on State Street. And so, we can, through credit card, you know that somebody was on a bike and that is, people are using bikes to do their errands
You could
on State Street.
Look at, where they came from, why they went to State Street, what's their household income, what's their race. You could see all kinds. And I think you'd probably find that a lot of it is people going to work on State Street.
Other questions? Okay. We have public oh, yeah.
I got one
Sir Vigas,
question.
yes.
How do they pick race?
That it's modeled, but it's with the census too. So the census can tell, by census tracker block group, you can have the percentage of households of different income categories and races within that group. And then, so that's then modeled. So it's part of it. And again, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's.
Any other questions? Okay. If there's any public comments?
Chair Blackerby, we have one speaker for public comment, Rhodey Wilson.
Sorry,
That's okay.
Randy Wilson.
Randy.
I signed up for the previous one.
Okay.
I started from the second bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Randy Wilson. Couple of things. The
the e-bike question is something you should really pay attention to if you can figure out more information, because like you drew the line at 4 miles that people will typically bike, but surveys find that e-bikes change that by a factor of 2 to 3. So with all the e-bikes that are coming in, and e-bikes have saved more carbon emissions in the world than all the EVs out there. So, and they're pretty much being ignored, but they're a huge factor. And the more we can make, active transportation and e-bikes possible, the more you can extend that line down and make people willing to bike much farther by e-bikes. Second, did you look into EIE, Environmental Insights Explorer? So it's a free Google product that allows you to do some of this combined with the carbon emissions calculations of the next thing. And I work tangentially related to it. So if you're interested in talking, I can point you to but it's just called Environmental Insights Explorer. And it provides free data to any city in the world for these types of things. And then finally, we would love to share this kind of information with you. Google has some of this, and I can't tell you all the details, but Google is a for-profit company and can't figure out a way to do this on the scale needed for cities. And even though there's so many cities in the world, the EIE is the one place for environment where we've figured out how to make that work. But Google would love to be able to do this, and we just can't figure out an economic model or a model to make that work. So if anyone has ideas, then anyway.
Thank you
We
very
had a
much.
crucial question for you. How are you going to change the Google map to 150, on Road 154?
Oh,
All right,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
we're not going to have a back and forth with public comment, but feel free to stick around and
Okay.
answer that question if you want.
I
Unless you'd like to address that in the last minute of your public comment.
think I'm over time, but
Exactly.
Google, again, can't scale that around the world because there are so many little details of somebody doesn't want this street driven on or somebody doesn't want this road driven on and things like that. And so it has to do everything by algorithms. And it's algorithms, it's really hard to tune to get everything right. And 154 saves someone 2 minutes, right? And so, and people want to do it. So, yeah.
Interesting.
So one thing I do know about this with regards to trying to get people to take the 101 instead of 154 from my past professional life is when there were, if you remember there's a really tragic, horrible accident of like a gravel truck that came down 154, lost its brakes or whatever, and landed over. That spurred a big 154 safe. I know Jefferson knows about this too. 154 safety thing, right? Because obviously there's a bunch of safety concerns about 154 for a bunch of reasons. And at that time, because the thing was get hazmat and get these big trucks off of 154. At the time, now this was before the ubiquitous nature of Google Maps, everyone just having a smartphone and going, here you go, this is the GPS. There was a lot of commercial GPS, so truck driver type stuff, commercial truck drivers had specific special commercial GPS devices or whatever's built into the truck. And it's my understanding that CHP worked with those companies that had that to say, for commercial GPS, don't send them through 154. And I think it's something they were able to do. Now, again, here we are. Most people going through aren't commercial trucks, and that doesn't, that sort of doesn't contribute to the sort of VNP and throughput. But it was one thing that I know they were able to kind of move the levers on. But again, most people aren't using commercial GPS. I don't even know if it exists anymore. So anyway, so that's one thing that I know there was ability to do at that point, probably a decade ago. Okay, any comments on any of this? Yes?
So one thing I noticed looking through this that really made me happy, and and I wanted to just highlight, was, if I'm understanding it right, I think it's attachment 3, the primary mode of travel for zero-car households, is that the vast, vast majority of zero-car households are biking, walking, or are using transit. It's a 1% are kind of like seeking car rides from other people. And I think that just shows that, you know, it is possible to live in Santa Barbara without a car, and you can get around, and, you know, you need a ride for 1% of the time, that's fine. And that of the county, it looked like Santa Barbara was tied for it was still only 5%, but of the highest percentage of households complete without a car. And a significant portion of households that were only one car. And so that just really made me happy. It does show, I think, that, you know, it's possible and we need more people doing it. I am, you know, in one of these two-person households that has a one-car. I take transit to get to work at UCSB. My partner drives, and I was very proud of that we were a one-car household, but now he does drive to Ventura, and so now I'm realizing we're actually in that, like, top 6%, which is not great, so we'll work on that. A couple other things. I think one reason that people do tend to take alternative methods for work more is that when you go to work, you're going to the same place every day, and you figure out your route once, as opposed to, it takes a while and some dedication to be like, okay, like, you know, this is the bus that goes to, like, my favorite restaurant, this is the one that goes to the park, this is this other route that goes to my doctor's office, like, that takes a little bit of time, whereas, like, I think a lot of our transit programs are, like, the, you know, Clean Air Express, are really based around the workday, or at least the 9-to-5 workday. And so I think that's why a lot of it is work-related or, like, hire for work. And I would love if we had buses running all the time, all weekend, same schedule as Monday through Friday. But I know that's a different challenge. And then I think the last thing, emphasizing that the e-bikes are really helpful. I do know a lot of people who commute from Santa Barbara to Goleta using e-bikes, that it's a huge help in getting people to kind of that, like, 8 to 12 mile commute. And it's a great ride, and I think the county's done a lot of good work to kind of improve that route. And regardless of, you know, I know e-bikes are controversial in the city, but I think it does show that they are important and an essential portion of the climate action plan, which I know is coming. Thank you.
Great segue. Any other comments?
Yes, I would like to make some comments. Gosh, I'm incredibly impressed with this work and the capacity that technology has given us to understand what's going on. I was in a citizen committee concerning healthcare during the development of the general plan in the 2008, 2009, 2010 period. And I'm bringing it up because I'm not trying to drag up ancient history, but to point out how much has changed and how much still needs to change. Because at that time, in the development of the general plan, there were, in discussions, and I don't know exactly the wording that ended up, but we had a vision of having a corridor up State Street of bus stops, and that there would be apartments and low-income housing and housing for students, and it would all be, we were really hoping to create that. And it's been, 15 years now? And I'm sorry to report that our housing situation seems abysmal with $2 million condominiums instead of anything that's affordable. But it ties in, I feel like I'm trying to look at the big picture of what you're explaining it. But the big picture is still that we have got to do something about the economic situation in order to create the transportation needs that you're trying to fill. It all interconnects so much. And I get a vision in my own head. In the 1980s, the Awani principles were developed and new urbanism was developed. And you can look them up in Wikipedia if nobody uses those. You had to recite them, that's right. Because what the vision I'm getting is the train station in downtown Pasadena. Stefan Palazoides, who is an, icon of architecture, built a beautiful train station that's apartments. And you feel like you want to be there, and if you haven't ever seen it, it's really worth seeing. And that's just a microcosm of an example of the kinds of things that can be done to try and encourage people to live where they work. And that's just a small piece of this big picture, but I think this work you're doing, and especially the fact that you're going to do it through 2039, that is so fabulous that you're going to have the longitudinal data and the ability to compare as you go and see what's working and what's not working. But where we can build houses, where we can build apartments, and how much they're going to cost and who's going to be able to live there is going to be crucial to this data. So I guess everybody already knows that, but I just wanted to point it out.
Important to
So-
say every time.
Yeah, exactly. So, thank you.
And that's what, just to add with Mr. Becker and his role as the Director of Planning, he also leads the effort for the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. So they're in the midst of an update right now with that. But yeah, he is, as part of the regional entity of pulling together where all the arena numbers are, where all the locations are for this, for the exact reason of how do you plan that out from a land use perspective and transportation. So that's like, outside of that, I also, serve on the technical advisory boards at the regional level. So, and that's how I learned about the, understanding of regional travel patterns. And so I'll try to, be as synergistic for the Transportation Circulation Committee, because this is all wonderful background information as you review our programs, our planning efforts, and it's all tied together. A lot of times, sometimes you're just seeing an intersection, but of how important that intersection would be for addressing a safety, so people do feel comfortable walking or biking or driving, for that matter. So, like you said, it's all connected.
I just want to add one small point. Back at the planning in that era, we were so excited about getting the building codes changed to allow only one parking place per residence for construction, because it had been two. So the vision was that developers would be more willing to build if they didn't have to have a giant basement area with two parking spaces. Well, now the state of California has changed all that, but even before that, it didn't pencil out. It was people, we were real excited about it, the city was excited about it, the city council was excited about it, but I just don't think we've come up with a plan yet. Regionally, I don't know where it has to come from, but a plan that's going to pencil out financially to have enough housing for the workforce that we need. So, that's it.
Thank you. Other comments? No? Well, the city has a nice fresh new housing element that is somehow going to solve all that. So we'll just look forward to that happening. I mean, I think it's more real than it's ever been, let's say. So yeah, all right. Thank you, Mr. Becker, for coming. Appreciate it. You're always welcome as a resident of the city. All right, so we will go to our next item, item number 3, 2024 Climate Action Plan, Proposed Transportation Measures and Actions.
Yes, so we'll kicking off our presentation will be Jefferson Linton, and he's part of our Sustainability and Resiliency Department at the City of Santa Barbara, and our Sustainability and Resiliency Manager. And he's here to talk about, he's been really immersed in at least the past year or two. It's probably, blink, blink, it's probably already been 2 years in the climate action planning effort. And he's here to give kind of an overview of that. But specifically, since this is your charge is in the transportation realm, that's what we're tasked to do today, is to really dive in on the transportation measures and actions that are a part of this plan. So with that, I'll let Mr. Linton kick us off.
Good evening. Before I start, I'd like to say that last presentation was one of the more impressive and fascinating presentations I've seen in a public meeting in a long time.
Not saying much, because it's mostly pretty boring, but yeah.
So I feel very fortunate to have been in the room for that. So it's a great job by Mike and Jessica on that. And I think one other point on that before I move forward was having really good data is one thing, but asking good questions into that data is far, far more important. And I think that the questions that they asked that were presented to us today were really quite revealing. And I think will be revealing for the work that we have to do via this document as well. As Jessica mentioned, my name is Jefferson Litton. I'm the Energy and Climate Division Manager in Sustainability and Resilience. Today I'm going to present the draft climate action plan to you, most specifically the transportation measures, for you to evaluate those consistencies with existing transportation planning documents. So this is the recommendation that'll be before you today, referencing those planning documents that I mentioned before. So at a very high level, a climate action plan is basically a roadmap to reduce a city or a jurisdiction's emissions across both municipal operations and the community. For us, it started with an inventory that we conducted in 2019 of all the emissions across the entire city. From there, we worked with consultants to project our emissions looking forward to 2045. And then we began a robust community outreach effort that included 1,500 outreach interactions and 10 plus public meetings, and presenting to both the Sustainability Committee on a couple occasions and the Planning Commission as well. And then probably at least 3 community meetings in addition to that. Informed with that information, we began developing a series of measures and actions aimed to reduce the city's emissions to reach our target goals. And the target goal that really underlines all this effort is City Council's goal to reach carbon neutrality by 2035. After developing those measures and actions, we have a work plan. I'll dig in that in a second. This is a CEQA document, and applicants that are doing projects that have to do environmental review can tier off the CEQA document for their climate reviews. So as I mentioned before, the target carbon neutrality by 2035 is extremely bold. So there are some bold actions included in this plan. Every action that we developed, we evaluated for equity, innovation, and as well as effectiveness and feasibility. And what I mean by effectiveness is the GHG reductions associated with each action. So with that information, we were able to develop our priority measures that went into our implementation plan that we would look to get done in the first 2 years. What we mean by an adaptable living document is that this isn't a sort of document that we're just going to create once and it's going to sit static for 10 years, 20 years. We have committed to coming back and reevaluating our status every 2 years, taking a look at which measures and actions we've completed and which ones we should prioritize moving forward. So the graph to your left is the emissions that came out of our 2019 inventory. And you can see by the green bubble that the vast majority of the emissions in the city of Santa Barbara come from transportation, primarily trips in internal combustion engine vehicles. The second most emissions comes from natural gas associated with buildings and then electricity. But really, so the 2 biggest opportunities are in transportation and reducing emissions from our building sector. One really interesting development actually two interesting developments since we did the inventory in 2019, was in 2021, the city of Santa Barbara launched their own community choice energy provider, Santa Barbara Clean Energy, and defaulted all of their customers to a 100% GHG-free electricity mix. So by that simple action, we were basically able to eliminate that 18% number of electricity emissions. Another big action that took place was Tehiguis landfill and the Resource Recovery Center, using the biodigesters there, basically capturing the methane emissions from the landfill. So we're also able to eliminate that 9%. So if you can look at the bar graphs to your right, you can see the big reductions that have already been achieved between 2019 and 2025 with those two measures. So it's put us well on our way. We have a long way to go, but it was an excellent first start. So orienting you to this graph, the blue line that you see on the top is the city's projected emissions, basically on just complying with state regulations and some things that we've already implemented, not including the two that I mentioned before. It's worth mentioning that this is not a business as usual line. The business as usual line would actually extend off of this graph, upward off of this graph. The dotted line you see below is the emissions reductions with Santa Barbara Clean Energy and with the Resource Recovery Center. The purple line is the two targets that we used, that we oriented our plan around. The first is AB 32, a 40% reduction below 1990 levels. That's our 2030 target. And then the second target is the zero emissions by 2035. You can see that purple line drawing to zero by 2035. The red line is our path if we were to implement all the measures and actions in the Climate Action Plan. So you can see that this Climate Action Plan does not actually get us to zero emissions by 2035. But it sets us on that course. And then, as I mentioned before, we are going to reevaluate every 2 years to see how we can adjust the slope so that we can get towards that carbon neutrality goal. So these are the 8 measures that are in the Climate Action Plan related to transportation. The first 2 measures are related to our municipal operations. So that's simply what the city can do with what we have, with our fleet, and how we can change the behavior of our employees is how they get to work. T3 through 5 are all related to encouraging alternative transportation or encouraging people to use alternative transportation. And then item T6 through T8 are the ways in which we can decarbonize our fleet and move people towards whether it's electric vehicles or electric bikes and eliminate emissions from those vehicle miles traveled. So for each one of these transportation measures, we developed between, I'd say, 6 and 12 actions, which got a little bit more granular supporting those measures and got a little bit more specific about what we would do. These are just a few that I pulled from our priority implementation plan, and you can kind of read through these. Additional items that are there, that are in the plan that I haven't listed here. Bike parking, encouraging EV charging infrastructure is a huge emphasis, and it's actually a huge GHG. In the calculations that we did, it's going to achieve huge GHG reductions because right now it's a huge barrier to electric vehicle adoption. Bike parking, bike lanes, some of the measures that you see and some of the actions that you see in this plan, we are already doing, and in some instances we've actually already accomplished. But because for CEQA regulations and because it's based on the 2019 inventory, we kept them in the plan. So I can dig in, more to the individual measures that you could see in the documents before you or the individual actions before you. But really, that was kind of the bulk of my presentation. And then I think Jessica can talk a little bit more to consistency with our plans if you have questions about that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Linton. And yeah, as far as for the TCC and in your role is finding that our various programs, planning efforts then are consistent with the general plan. specifically the circulation element, pedestrian master plan, bicycle master plan, and Vision Zero strategy. So during this work effort, we worked closely with the Sustainability and Resilience team for that very consistency. Again, as we mentioned, even in the prior item for the circulation element is to have a system of choices, so you're not always having to get into a car for every single trip. But of course, within that, that's just the overarching goal of the circulation element. There's many action items within that own element to follow. But again, we cross-check those for consistency. And then with the pedestrian master plan and bicycle master plan, we really just wanted there will be iterations of those plans over time as well, and really the goal of the climate action plan was just that we're carrying out the action items within those plans. We didn't want to be like, have your own set of policies where it's like, well, where's this located? It's just really the main message. And as Mr. Linton also pointed out, like again, we used the kind of the baseline of 2019. And we had a baseline, for example, for the bicycle master plan was of 2016 to have 30 miles of bikeway facilities added. And so we've already hit that target. And that was supposed to be by 2030. So we are ahead of schedule, but certainly the work is not done. And again, there will always be iterations of the pedestrian and bicycle master plans, adding more networks, again, as we plan out various facilities. And then a lot of it for the Vision Zero strategy is just making sure when we're carrying out the transportation-related items is just, again, that we have that lens to make sure that our network is safe for all road users. So people do feel comfortable traveling on our network and that it's safe.
Questions?
Yeah, so I think, and then, just summarizing that, again, the recommendation is to find consistency with the transportation measures and actions. And again, Mr. Linton just highlighted a few, like, I think we would be in a 4-hour meeting if we went through everyone in such detail, but we did provide the details in the two attachments. Again, the together the zero's been, it's, again, these are edited versions where it has the general, the overarching principles and how to read it, and we just had the transportation sections in there, and then the longer on the attachment 2 was actually from Rincon, the consultants, that took a deeper dive in the actions and all of that. But yes, Mr. Linton and I are here to answer any questions you might have related to those the measures and then the various actions under those measures.
Great. Question? Yes?
I have a comment for Mr. Litton. So I know in some sense, you've, zeroed out the carbon emission of our electricity, but you look at the California grid and, during the day, we're doing pretty well. At night, we're not. So there's all this talk about getting more car chargers everywhere, and certainly many people are only going to be able to charge at night. But the only way we're going to get this EV thing done without needing to build twice as many batteries is to have chargers available where people's cars are during the day. And I'm not seeing any, you're not doing it, but you're not leaning that way. And I'm just wondering whether I'm missing something or what.
Yeah, so it's an excellent point, and I think there's a lot there. Let me start at the back about what we are doing, and then I'll kind of get to the beginning of that question. The most impactful measure in the transportation section is number T6.1, and it says, in 2025 and every 3 years thereafter, amend the municipal code to require an increased number of electric vehicles capable of charging spaces in new construction, major redevelopment for mixed-use, multifamily, and importantly, commercial development. So it's at the businesses as well. It's at the multifamily units where right now there's no place for you to charge an electric vehicle. And that by far, in the calculations that our consultant did, was the most emissions of anything in the transportation, in the entire transportation sector. I think the problem that you point to about, we're doing great during the day. I mean, during the solstice last week, solar was basically provided 100% of the energy need across all the state of California. But it's that 4 to 9 period or in the evening where we have to look to alternative sources. And that's where batteries become really, really important. That's where having a diverse energy mix, including wind, and, hydro is still a player, is really important. But right now, when you see projects being developed, utility scale projects, you very rarely see a project that does not have batteries associated with it right now. And so that's going to be sort of the key point. And there's a lot of great minds working on this right now, and it's basically smoothing out that curve. So instead of having a ramp like this, we can just stay steady. But you're exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of challenges. Electrification is going to add a lot more load. So we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, I'd like to see, more chargers where people park their cars during the day.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I know commercial development is great, but we've got 2 chargers in the Paseo garage, and
Yeah.
they were broken the last time I was there, and
Yeah.
I don't know of any others. I know there were.
Well,
a few more
we've
now.
just added a lot more. So we added, I believe, 10 Tesla fast chargers in lot 10, as well as, is it 6 of the dirt road charge ready? It might be more. Yeah.
I want to say there's 19 total
Yeah.
chargers in lot 10, so near Salem Wave also, so if you want to park kind of by where Mrs. was.
You want to repeat that on the mic, Jefferson?
Yes.
Otherwise, the phone's going to ring.
So it's 19 chargers in total that we just added at lot 10, just over here. And then we have permit applications in for 4 more chargers at the harbor. I believe 4 more chargers at the East Side Library, and then 4 more chargers at the Amtrak station as well.
Nice.
Good.
We also have quite a few chargers in lot 6.
Yeah.
Yep. And lot
Yes.
6. Yep.
Thank you.
So yes, from a municipal perspective, where we do have control to be able to have that daytime usage, the Sustainable and Resiliency has been working with all the other facilities, and so yes, as what you heard in the audience, Ms. Clark, our downtown manager, who also oversees the downtown parking facilities. So we continue over time to try to increase that to provide for that daytime charging needs. And then I think also beyond that, those are we're triaging, and where can you get the most amount of chargers at the best locations and all of that. But and also from for example, this campus for 630 Garden Street, that's also being analyzed just for employees that come in with their EV vehicles to be able to potentially have charging for that. So that's also being talked about. And then, of course, with the green code requirements and on the land development side, that's also under review and trying to increase that amount as well to have availability.
Good.
Other questions? Yeah, Ms. Eachel?
Thanks.
I have a few questions. I guess I'll do these one at a time. First off, I know it's automatically in, but people can opt out. So what's the current participation rate in the community choice?
So
Power.
Santa Barbara Clean Energy, right now, I think our opt-out rate is 6%, so we have 94% participation, which is above the industry standard for community choice providers.
Awesome. Cool. And then these are kind of or all over the place, but I saw in the document that there was a 1 to 20, you were going off of one EV charger per 20 EV vehicles. I think I saw, does that, as like a target, does that include all EVs that are projected to be in the city, assuming that a lot of people are charging like on their, personal property or,
Are you looking at T6.2 for that statistic?
where
or-
was I? Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
It was the 20 charger, 20 EVs per charger. Where'd it go? I forget which document it was in.
Yeah.
It was in the staff report. There's a lot of documents here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it was in one of these tables, I think.
One of these guys?
Or, yeah, like,
Oh, in that,
somewhere.
the
Yeah.
Rincon Consulting
Oh, you'll find it.
report.
Yeah, T6.2. Page 44.
For clarification, it's the T6.2? Was that the,
On page 45 of the technical evidence,
yeah,
it referenced, the city's primary target will be to provide one public EV charger for every 20 EVs and ensure as many privately owned chargers are installed in new development as practicable. So that was for public chargers.
Okay, yeah.
But there was a table with actual amounts of cars
Yeah.
somewhere.
Okay, so that is public chargers, so like people who have one at their house is not part of the 20, because that would not be
Yeah.
enough.
Correct.
Okay.
and then to supplement the climate action plan, the city also has, I'm not going to say the right title, but EV charging location plan. What's the actual name? I'm
So we've done some preliminary research and sort of laying out where we want to put our next chargers. One of the very first priority actions is actually to do a study on both EV charging across municipal, so how to basically electrify our fleet and then add new charging across the community. So pretty much like two of the things that we're going to do right out the gate is that study, and then we're also doing a study about building electrification as well.
And that's also happening regionally as well for our entire county. So what we've had for target sites is being fed into the larger system to make sure that, there's enough charging locations. It's actually interesting, one of the barriers that just came up was citing that there's some ideal locations are also in the flood zone. So we're looking at navigating that. Sometimes it's as easy as changing it from one side of a parking lot to the other, like at the Amtrak station. But there's some that, would still be ideal. So that's something else we're exploring. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on to that point, we are definitely looking at this question regionally, and there's a lot of money coming down from the state through SB1 to add more EV charging capability along the 101 corridor. So each year or every 2-year cycle, we're looking at new places where we can add chargers there. One other effort is very worth mentioning is through a state grant called Reach 2.0, which was a partnership between Santa Barbara Unified School District, UCSB, and the city, as well as the Community Environmental Council. We are putting EV charging in school parking lots that will be available to residents in multifamily housing to charge at night. So the employees can use that charging during the day, and then during the evening, those homes that might not necessarily have EV chargers or might not even have off-street parking have a space where they can charge their vehicles.
That's great.
And then my last question, thank you for that. I think the inventory for the GHG inventory you're using, I think it was from 2019. I guess I was just curious how often, I know it's doing a full citywide inventory is a huge, big undertaking, but how often would the inventory be updated in addition to the policies?
So I think it's unclear at this point. At a minimum, it would be 10 years. It could be as early as 5. And so I think it's sort of evaluating how we think that we're doing on that. And so I think we have our goal at this point. I think we know where we need to get.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, other questions? Ms. Rodriguez, do you have some?
I think, yeah, I do. This is beautiful. I like the graphics, and I like the important information inside, not just because it's pretty. If this is a final version, well, if this is a draft, I don't want to be complaining about something that's not final, but documents like this, a part of our job is to share with our friends and people that we know. And this has no dates on it. It doesn't say what day it was put out. And if that's not ready yet, then that, I don't want to complain. But I'd like to use it and maybe share it with some of my friends and neighbors, but I don't know when it started. This letter from you has some dates of the plans that are being incorporated. That was very useful to me. So is this going to be improved?
So I think the big edit that we're going to make to that is there's a signature page from the electeds where we don't have a signature yet, and then I think we would add a date there, and probably add a date at the last point about when it was adopted.
And then this
I
is
looked all through it. This would
scheduled
be
to go,
terrific.
yes, to go to adoption July 2nd.
Which is Tuesday.
Yes.
Oh,
And so,
Yeah.
So you really need us to vote to,
No, it's lovely, and I think if, with just the date from the city council, it's a nice package.
That's
Thank you.
excellent feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome.
other questions? I have one. So I know, climate action plans became sort of a required thing from the state of California now quite some time ago. And I remember the first sort of round of them, a lot of local jurisdictions, it was like, all right, we did it. And like, there wasn't really any, kind of like, sort of RENA numbers or whatever. For a long time, it was like, do a plan, turn in your plan. You did a plan, good job, right? But now they seem more like, okay, we really got to do this, right? Just in the past 10 years, right?
Yeah.
People have been like, oh no, we're in trouble. We
Yeah.
really actually have to do these things for our own good, not just to like satisfy a requirement, right? However, right now, obviously the municipal ones, the city has control over, right? You can do that. The other ones, you can do with sort of like levers that you can attempt or partnerships. A lot of the transit stuff obviously is in partnership. But I'm just, on any given Tuesday, you have a city council who, while it's maybe the right thing to do to get that number down, might be like, oh, but someone might yell at me or whatever, right? Like it's politics ultimately, right? So I guess what I'm wondering is, how do you see this iteration of the climate action plan sort of being successful and moving on the path of actually being implemented in those like sort of quick steps and kind of on a shorter time horizon, which is what we need to avert disaster. Like, how do you see that? Are you hopeful? Do you think we can get there? Or I'm just curious, like, what you think might be different now than sort of in the past.
I'm extremely hopeful.
Okay.
And I'm actually, and I don't think that that's without basis. But I'm also aware that this is going to take a huge commitment. It's going to take a commitment of resources. It's going to take a commitment of additional staff. It's going to take a commitment of political will. But I think what the council has shown us thus far is those commitments. They've already adopted the goal of carbon neutrality. And so this is the plan about how to get us there. I think one thing that's unique about the city of Santa Barbara and how we're poised with Santa Barbara Clean Energy and our own community choice energy provider, which was basically designed so that we could provide incentives to help people come along this journey with us, whether it is purchasing an electric vehicle, whether it is purchasing an e-bike, whether it's bringing a heat pump water heater into your home, or whether it's getting a discount to put solar up on your roof. Those are the incentives that we can use Santa Barbara Clean Energy to create to make it more affordable to come along this journey. I mean, really, my division's job is to make this journey accessible, affordable, and easy. That's what we do every day. That's what we're working to do every day.
Okay, great. Well, I have faith that there's definitely a great team working on it, and you know, I mean, when the council adopts, I guess this is sort of like how to operationalize it. When the council adopts the plan, they're telling you, okay, go do it, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're really gonna be able to go do it, or do you have to come back every little whip stitch and go, okay, so we're trying to implement T point, blah, 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 and then that's when the sort of rubber meets the road? I mean, that's just what I'm worried about, right? Like when we think about things that we've seen in the transportation space over the years, we're like, we know this will have an impact, this will get people out of their cars, this will be do whatever. And then it'll be like, okay, but you're gonna pay for parking. And people are like, forget it, no way, I don't wanna change my behavior, right? So that's just, you know, I've been burned too many times to feel, fully confident. But I guess that's what I'm saying is, if it's in this plan, they're saying, go do it.
It's in this plan. It's in our budget. I think for next year, I think we have $2.25 million to accomplish these goals.
Right.
You know, and we've mapped out at a rough level what it's going to take, and so
Okay.
I feel good.
And I think it's important to mention too that Mr. Lynn said that this is an iterative process. So this, again, we're setting the baseline, and this is, again, our most comprehensive climate action plan to date. But and then that there will be check-ins every couple of years. Well, those check-ins also closely follow our budget cycles as well. So if the plan is adopted, we're basically now into our next 2-year budget. And so that's when money starts to be assigned for these efforts. And so I think it's we're optimistic. Time will tell. And I think it's iterative because you won't get everything in a 2-year budget.
No.
So it's going to take lots of 2-year budgets to get to these goals.
Great. Any other questions? Is there any public comments?
Yes, Chair Blackerby, we have one speaker, Randy Wilson,
Okay.
and no online speakers.
Come on up again.
Thanks for letting me talk. So this plan is great. It looks consistent to me with all of the, circulation, pedestrian, bike, Vision Zero plans. It doesn't look to me like it's consistent with the Together to Zero carbon neutrality goal of 2035. I mean, I don't need to convince all of you how important this is for the global poor. And Santa Barbara is one of the richest cities around. If we don't have the resources to reach, carbon neutral by 2035, nobody does. And, as one of those highly paid people, that Mike was talking about earlier, I feel like the rich in Santa Barbara have the ability and should take the responsibility for addressing this problem, at least here, set an example for people and stuff. And I feel like this plan, you guys have done a great job putting this together, trying to get through what's politically feasible, as Hillary said. But more should be politically feasible. And I feel, I went through the plan, and, some of the things that with stars that said we're doing this in the next 2 years are relatively small things that are not going to have the super big impacts. The things that are going to have big impact are, the infrastructure steps that are going to take a long time to build, and then they're going to take a long time to have an effect. And if you actually want to get to 2035, we're not going to get there. And, you know, I understand that you've done a good job putting together what you can within the political boundaries, but I'm really sad that Santa Barbara, with the amazing, rich resources we have, that we're not capable of putting together those resources and possibly some sacrifice to be able to achieve something as important as this. And it, you know, I think my dad died last year, and his generation was capable of community sacrifice for the greater good. I think we lost that in my generation, and that's really sad. You know, like you said, people, oh, you know, this is great. Oh, but I have to pay for parking? And so that's just really sad. And I wish that we had, you know, some really bold ideas like, you know, swamping the city, double the number of bike lanes that are safe for people and support e-bikes, and take the long-term and infrastructure steps now so that they'll have time to have an effect. Revolutionize transit in some way, like provide that free bus up and down Santa Barbara and around a bunch of our arteries for people. What about limiting or taxing gas stations? I don't know. Some of these are off the wall and they would require sacrifice, and people aren't willing to do it. And you've put together the best plan I think you can. I just think it's really sad. I don't think we're going to reach 2035 zero. And I think, you know, we either need to come up with a plan that might do that, or we need to accept that, no, we've failed. You know, we're not going to get there. We need to be honest with ourselves about this. So anyway, thank you very much for the plan and the presentation and everything.
Thank you for coming. All right. Any comments? Yeah, Ms. Rodriguez?
There I go. I'm going to once again speak to the synergy of all the things going on in the community at the same time. When we went to the meeting yesterday, and this is long-standing things I've learned, we're looking at possibly having a lot more housing in the central area. Housing at the old Macy's building, housing on the second story of the buildings downtown. We haven't done a great job of having it be affordable for anybody, but the gentleman who's gone made a very good presentation of how the middle income people are missing, and they're all having to commute from Ventura to come and work here. So I hope that there will be some synergistic effect that will help our carbon emissions if we can get more people living in the city core. And that's not specifically your job, but the people that are working on that aspect, I hope it all comes together. And I was very excited to see the ideas yesterday, thinking about more housing and more walkability yeah, that's what I mean. Thank you.
Yeah. Other comments? Yep. Ms. Edelman?
So, I think I want to, echo some of these other comments. I think this is a great plan, and a lot of these things do seem very achievable. At the same time, like, I can't say it's done. It's not enough. We all know it's not enough. We know it's an iterative process, but I think part of, doing an iterative process is you can't look at the current draft and be satisfied. So I think that's, kind of where I feel is that it's great, but I also can't say that I'm satisfied with it. It doesn't get us there. And I think also, as our speaker said, if not Santa Barbara, then like who can do this? We have a generally sustainable minded population. We have the climate. We have a fairly condensed city. Like, if it's not us, then it's no one. So I just really want to emphasize we need as much and more and more and more if we're going to get anywhere close to where we need to be. For some of the details in the plan, I'm generally much more of a transportation and or transit-minded, and I'm always a little hesitant when focus is on electric vehicles because I don't want to just trade out 1 million gas-powered vehicles for 1 million electric vehicles. But I think given related to making sure all of our city efforts are in synergy is because we are having such a housing push right now, this electrified parking as a regulation for new housing, I think is kind of a priority at this point before we bake in a ton of new housing that just doesn't have it for the next 50 years. On being more transit-minded, I would always, just gonna use this as my soapbox to say always more transit. I love MTD. I love to see shuttles and bus lines that go through neighborhoods. The Line 3 is right by my house, but it's also right by a lot of people's houses, and it goes from some of the shopping node on Upper State and downtown, and I think that is just more of those connecting residential to places that people need to go and encouraging more and more transit adaptation. Also, I think with, we've talked about building more housing, but just more mixed zoning, converting, when you have a corner store 2 blocks from your house, you don't have to go to the grocery store for every trip. And I think the more we can have kind of small commercial, a couple like small restaurants mixing in. There's a couple places that are within walking distance from me, and I go there more than other restaurants, and just to avoid a car trip. I do feel like this plan is a lot of carrots and no sticks, and I know that's the politically feasible way of going through things, but I think, when you can, we sometimes need some sticks, and I would like to see, yes, we should pay for parking, not just downtown, but maybe we do need to discourage people owning 3 or 4 cars and parking them on the street, and I think that's not just a benefit to the climate plan, but also people who do need to park on the street. We could try and make move towards less congestion. If people don't need that extra car, we can incentivize maybe cutting down the number of cars you own. And I think that's it for me.
Great. Yeah, Ms. Rodriguez?
I just wanted to add, when I went to the presentation at the construction apartment building that might be done at La Cumbre Plaza, I'm not sure where they are at this point, but I went and saw that presentation, and I was really impressed with the idea that all these apartments would be several stories. People would be discouraged from owning cars, that they would have that they will have cars available that you can I don't know if it'd be a rental or owned by the association somehow, some sort of a car share. And it's a concept that's new. And what's hitting me in this conversation is that we do have a sense of what we have to provide for cars. And where did we get, used to be we had to have 2 cars for every family. Now maybe one's okay. But that vision that was expressed even by the developers was, we're going to provide access for some shared cars, and that people who live here would have access to them and no one else would. I thought, what a great idea. And I had never heard that idea. So I think it's important to keep looking at those kinds of ideas, and like you said, no need for cars at all, everyone in your planning world can't be stuck with the requirement of providing something for somebody's car. It's my push.
Yep. Mr. Smith?
Just a quick comment. Pasadena was pushing for that 30 years ago. I don't think it went anywhere.
Did I mention Stefan Palazoides,
Yeah.
the designer of downtown Pasadena, earlier? Yeah. So
Okay.
I don't know where it went. But we got to keep trying.
It's definitely happening in more places. Car sharing is on the upward trajectory. Other comments? Yeah, I did not mean to be pessimistic. This is really well done. I know a lot of public outreach went into it. And I mean, the transportation stuff is obviously pretty beefy and it's, you know, a large percentage, but the other things are very, the other parts of it are very creative and interesting as well in you know, reducing waste and, you know, sort of just like even going to the, like I know there was like the Fix-It fair recently and things like that. Like that kind of thing that's creative and small but like can touch everyone's lives, I think is great. And having people think about all these things in different ways that like, yes, actually buying that dress on Amazon contributes to carbon emissions in a significant way because it's going to fall apart in 6 months and then you're going to throw it in the landfill, right? Plus somebody had to truck it to your house and all that stuff. So like thinking about it in the broader sense. So when the whole package, you know, is out and, you know, we all get a chance to look at it and it gets adopted and everything, definitely encourage people to look at the whole thing and see how all the different things tie in together. But yeah, good luck. A motion would be in order. And I'll read it out for you so you can just say, so moved. A motion that the committee find the transportation measures and actions incorporated in the draft 2024 Climate Action Plan consistent with the general plan, circulation element, 2006 Pedestrian Master Plan, 2016/2022 Bicycle Master Plan, and the 2018 Vision Zero Strategy. Is there a motion to that effect? We are finding that the measures and actions in this action plan are consistent with circulation element, pedestrian, bicycle, and
Also, as outlined in this, on the slide.
on the screen, in fact, is what I read.
I'll second that motion.
I need,
You need to move it?
Yeah.
I'll move.
okay.
Accept that.
Moved by Rodriguez and a second by, don't go all at once, everyone.
I'll second it.
Okay, by Smith. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, unanimous. Go
Great.
forth to council and adopt.
So, Mr. Linton, yeah, we'll carry forward what the Transportation Committee's recommendation was. You're also more than welcome to attend on behalf of the committee or individual during the public comment as well for the council item on the 2nd. I believe the agendas are posted to this evening, I think it was. So, yeah, so to get a general time for that.
We should be up first. So.
Up first, okay.
Great.
You know, when we started the general plan in 2008, we were excited to even talk about pollution and trying to help people not get asthma. And we were going to work on reducing cars. And that was about as specific as we could get. And now it's really exciting that we're at the point where we have an office, you know, a department that's working on all of this. That's a huge transition in, 10 years, roughly? It's a lot, because we kind of had a global, well, this is going to be important and we're going to do our best. But the quantification with the presentation earlier and this presentation, I'm optimistic. You know, there's a lot of progress, even if it doesn't feel like it, so.
That's true. Yeah, I think at this committee, we see a ton of progress all the time with all these great ATP projects, so it is possible. Great. With that, I suppose we will adjourn?
adjourn.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.